I thought that training for the Olympics would be the hardest thing I would ever do. But in fact, the hardest thing I've had to do is process that I'm a victim of Larry Nassar.
Jordyn Wieber won Olympic gold in gymnastics for Team USA at the 2012 Olympic Games. 6 years later, she testified in front of U.S. senators about the abuse she suffered at the hands of the team doctor, Larry Nassar, who was later convicted of rape. And she talks candidly about the trauma she suffered. Jordyn Wieber is here on The Why tonight to talk about what it means to be an athlete and to be an activist and her journey. She's now a women's gymnastics coach at the University of Arkansas. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight to have this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
So we heard you in that piece. That was you in 2018. You're coaching and creating an environment that's healthy for young gymnasts. We all remember you standing on that podium, winning gold at the London Games in 2012, and we all remember also seeing you ladies so bravely come forward about the sexual abuse you all suffered. You're now devoted to making sure young women have a safe life in sports. Where has the last couple years taken you in life?
Well, I mean, even seeing that video, it feels like so long ago. After my career in gymnastics and honestly processing through all of the things that happened to me through the sport. Obviously I had an awesome gymnastics career and achieved a lot of things, but there were also some other parts of my career that were a little bit more dark. But at the end of the day, I love the sport of gymnastics with all of my heart. And I envision a healthier, safer environment for all future gymnasts that want to strive to make an Olympic team like I did someday. And so now I'm coaching and, doing everything in my power to not only improve the culture of our sport of gymnastics, but really create just an awesome environment here for our athletes to thrive and grow and push themselves to reach their goals and their potential, but also learn a lot of life lessons and, just have a good experience in the sport.
The women's gymnastics team made such a fundamental impact on so many levels. I mean, you ladies changed the culture of opening up to have these conversations and honestly opening up the eyes of not only so many athletes, but so many parents of what can go so terribly wrong in sport. Talking about it, of course, is hard for anyone at any age, but you were so young when this was happening. I'm wondering if there were other athletes or people in sport that you look to as inspiration for speaking out and sharing your story?
I mean, honestly, throughout the whole, year of 2018 and everything coming out about Larry Nassar and all of the abuse that, multiple people, hundreds of people suffered at his hands. And, really what inspired me and motivated me to speak out was the fact that I wasn't alone and the fact that I knew other people had been through something similar as me. And I thought, if I can do that for at least one other person, then it's worth it for me to speak out. But the sad reality is, I mean, historically in the sport of gymnastics, we're so young when we train and compete. And I was just 17 when I went to the Olympics, and 14, it's, the first time Larry Nassar sexually abused me. So, the culture of in the sport of gymnastics was one of silence and obedience as far as the athletes and just, not a great healthy power dynamic between people in authority positions, coaches, national team staff, doctors. So we didn't feel like we had a voice while it was happening to us. We didn't have anybody that was really looking out for us and protecting us. But, banding together with my sister survivors and teammates and saying, if this is going to help the next generation, then it's worth it. That made it a little bit easier. And hopefully it makes it easier for the next person to speak out if they ever have been through anything similar.
Over the past decade, as more athletes have spoken out about all kinds of challenges they faced. You think of Lindsey Vonn, who talks about depression. Simone Biles is also an activist for mental health. For you, do you feel like after so many of these athletes have been coming out and being more open about their issues and their challenges, are the resources getting better? Are the tools getting better? Are we making that stride?
I like to think that we're heading in that direction. I don't think we're even close to where we need to be as far as, I can speak to the sport of gymnastics. I think a lot of things were uncovered. It wasn't just Larry Nassar. It was, our sport, our organization, our national governing body, and, the Olympic Committee. It was all of it. And it's not going to be an overnight fix, but, we're going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep advocating for change. And, I think a lot of it is education and making sure that coaches are educated and, parents are educated. And so we can look out for the young gymnasts in our country. And I mean, you said it before. I know this is not just a gymnastics issue. It goes across all sports. But I just think about all those little gymnasts, doing what I loved to do when I was young as well, and just wanting them to be safe and be able to do what they love and be in the gym and have fun and reach their goals.
Well, you're a coach, right? You just talked about that, advocating for those little girls, and you see them every day in your gym. What do you do to make sure that they have a healthy sports environment?
I mean, so many things. Obviously, it starts with our leadership and our coaching staff, setting a good example and being committed to having a good, positive environment, one that is not in any way, shape, or form abusive, and it's supportive and it's empathetic. While at the same time holding a standard of hard work and discipline and being able to do the things we need to do in order to succeed in our sport. But at the same time, we have so many support staff and resources for our student athletes that we lean on. We have a dietitian, we have a sports psychologist, we have an athletic trainer, we've got doctors. So, really giving them the resources and tools they need to be healthy, to be mentally and physically safe and supported. And I feel very passionate about making sure that, we as coaches don't overstep into areas where we're not experts. I think that's important. And at the same time, I have so many good conversations with our student athletes, checking in on them, honestly supporting them as a whole human being and not just as an athlete. I think that's something that all coaches can really focus on. And, when they're healthy as a human being, they do much better than in the gym anyway. So that's what I want for my student athletes, and I want them to graduate feeling whole and feeling excited and empowered and ready to take on the world.
A lot of times in elite sports, coaches are from an older generation. Do you think with all of the activism we've seen from athletes, especially over the last several years, that it's going to change sport as a whole and for this new generation of athletes growing up?
I definitely see it changing currently, with people like Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles, and really using their platforms to speak about some of the things that I think have always been struggles for people and issues, but it wasn't really talked about. It was kind of suppressed and pushed down, and maybe people were nervous or scared to talk about it. But now, we're removing the stigma of mental health. We're removing the stigma of speaking out and using your voice and being empowered to do that. And I think that's really amazing, and I'm excited to see where that goes with sports. And I hope that every athlete feels empowered to use their voice. I know I wasn't when I was a competing athlete, but I am now. And that's what I want for the athletes that I coach. That's what I want for all future Olympians and athletes of really any age. They feel empowered, and they have the support and the right resources that they need to be healthy, human beings.
For people who are listening, what would be your advice for coaches or parents to open up this conversation with their kids to make it of just a healthy environment at home or at the gym or wherever they're training, to be able to have these conversations so you feel like you can speak up when you're having challenges?
No, it sounds so simple, but honestly, I think checking in with kids and not just checking in, but really listening and asking a lot of questions. And, I think trusting your gut and allowing your kids to trust their gut when they feel like something is wrong or uncomfortable or not right, really listen and believe them and know that they have some intuition too. So I think it sounds so simple, but just ask a lot of questions, check in, listen, and really start that conversation, because, parents can't be with their kids 24/7 all the time, but we want to make sure that they're comfortable, they're safe, they're not being taken advantage of or abused in any way.
Well, you are such an inspiration, and such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for coming on The Why and sharing your story and insight and helping to make sports safer. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.